Welcome to another episode of Stoke Meter, and we are truly honored to have Amy Forsythe with us. Now, you might have heard about Amy if you have looked at any news reports that have to do with combat and any type of things that come from world reports in the Middle East, especially of our time there in Afghanistan. And the reason why is Amy was a military correspondent there. And actually, you served 3 tours there, didn't you? Is that what
I did. I served 3 tours in Afghanistan and 2 tours in Iraq over the past 20 years.
Well, and from what I read, and if I got this right, it wasn't just a military correspondent. You were also in combat over there as well. Is that correct?
That's correct. Serving in a combat zone, exposed to the elements, but I was out documenting the, our combat operations, our partnered training, our patrols, our engagements with the Iraqis and the Afghans.
That is absolutely amazing. And it didn't stop you there. I know that you were on active duty for 8 years. And then a cumulative of 20 plus years in the military?
That's right, almost 29 years, just shy of 29 years, active duty and reserves. So I've been thinking of the long game and really just being able to balance a career while I was in the reserves with being able to continue to serve.
Oh my goodness. And that's one thing that really came out is your knack for serving others. It was quite touching to read a lot of the stories that were out there on you, and also the interviews. Amazing. And currently you're the director of communications for the Military Corps Tactical Systems Support Activity, but I know there's some other things that I saw as well. What are some of those things that you're still involved in?
Well, thanks. Yeah, I like to, have outlets or creative partnerships with, writing, telling stories. I also do consulting for a leadership consulting company called Victory Strategies, where we do team building exercises, keynote speeches, and delivering some coaching and alignment sessions for executives. So I've just been blessed with opportunities to be able to have my hands in different things going on. But of course, working as a federal employee, but also serving in the Navy Reserve. So I still continue as a public affairs officer in the Navy Reserves. And that just really gives me a great network and opportunities for exciting events that are happening that I can go and support surge activities. Like last year with COVID, many of my colleagues were helping with the COVID mission in New York. There's always other opportunities to serve on ship or do the Navy Fleet Weeks around the country. So there's some great opportunities where they need specific help for a certain short amount of time.
If you haven't noticed,
if you don't mind,
no, go ahead. I was going to go. If you haven't noticed, Karch is in scrubs, so go ahead.
I'm skipping out on work so I come talk to you. I'm very excited. I have whenever people make the military a career, or even if they're just doing the 4 years, whatever it is, it's always interesting to me to see how you made that change in your life. Some people have military runs in the family. Some people have a life event that kind of pushes them that direction. Some people go because they have no direction. Let's roll back to when you joined the military. What was going on with you at the time, and what was your thought process?
Well, thanks. My grandparents were in the military and was always very aware of their service. They talked about World War II, and my grandmother was a nurse in the Army, and met my grandfather in the Marines, over in the Pacific on the island of Guam and during the island hopping campaigns. And so to be honest, I I went to a Catholic school, all girls Catholic school, and prepping girls to go on to college, of course, and have successful careers. And I just was not ready for college. And so I was always drawn to military service, and it's just ingrained in me. And I wanted to go into the Marines, but my parents said, just try to go to school first. And if you don't like that, then go into the Marine Corps. So I did. I twiddled away for a couple years, trying to go to school and work. And then when I was 21 is when I joined the Marines. And so I waited a couple years. I was a little bit older by Marine Corps standards, as being, older than 18, but I felt like that really gave me even more motivation to do well and really want it. And so I fought. I had to chase down the recruiters, said, I want to join, and they made me work for it to earn a spot and get the job that I wanted, which was working in public affairs and as a photographer. So as a combat photographer, that very few opportunities, few jobs spots for that. So I got my first choice and went right into school, the Defense Information School, after I graduated boot camp. And so I just really wanted it a lot. And so my 8 years was spent covering, stories. My first duty station, I was stationed in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. So right out of the gate, I got this great assignment. So that's really how that developed. Everyone in my hometown thought I was crazy. And my grandmother was like, oh my goodness, she's never gonna make it. She'll never, she didn't say that, but later she said she was a little worried about me. But I did just fine. So, and came home and told everyone about my Marine Corps experience. So they loved that. The nuns at the school and those at the school would always invite me back, actually, to talk to the girls about opportunities and non-traditional paths, but service in the military, is encouraged. Back in those days, though, when I was coming up in the 80s, it was really discouraged, but they'd had a change of heart, really, after some girls went on to military service and successful military service, then they began to accept it. So,
and of all the branches in the military, you went after the Marines, which I'm sure was probably the most difficult.
I know, the most unlikely pairing, but I tell people I went to Catholic school, wore a uniform, and I went to school and I did what the nuns told me to do. And then the military, you go and you wear a uniform, you go to work and you do what the NCOs and the officers tell you to do. So it was just a natural progression, natural fit for me.
So, I've got to ask you this. Back in the 80s, so that's about the same time that we were in school as well. And back in the day, it was guys. And it was something that had to be, you were a pioneer pretty much when you take a look at everything that you did back then. I'm just wondering, what were some of the obstacles that you ran into? What were some of the support that you received? And what would you be telling anyone that would like to do it now?
I didn't know how much opposition there would be when I joined. I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. And so there were some good days, some bad days, some highs and lows, but overall, I really had such great support through the years. Some people, obviously didn't like the idea of women being in the Marine Corps, but I didn't really let them bother me. I just had my eyes fixed on what missions was I doing, where can I make an impact? And now I feel like we've opened some doors for women and opened some minds of some male senior leadership, and that what really sort of changed the tide, I believe, a big factor is that when women have been serving in combat and through Iraq and Afghanistan, I think nearly 200 female service members have been killed in both conflicts, both wars. And so, and one of those being a boss that I had, her name was Megan McClung, and she was killed in Iraq in 2006. And when people realize that if you're willing to kid up go to a combat zone and serve in any capacity, you're putting yourself at great risk first. But secondly, that if you're willing to do that, you don't have to prove your loyalty to the country or your dedication and your motivation. Is that because you've already done that, you're there. And so by all accounts, that has sort of shaped and changed the mindset of male or male counterparts, is that if she's willing to risk it all, go forward, go on a mission, then that's all that they need to know. Whereas before they might not have said, well, is she up for it? Does she realize what comes with the risks of service? Like, yes, we know the risks and we're willing to take the risk. What more do you want me to prove to you? And so with, and just like we saw with our brave young Marines and soldiers in Afghanistan just last month in August, where 2 of the Marines were female and risking it all, being there. And people can no longer say, well, we're not really sure if that woman or the female young girls are ready for the task, but they are. And I think so, unfortunately, through the loss of life, but they've shown and proved to everyone that if you're wearing a uniform, you're ready for those risks.
Right.
So I think that's the biggest takeaway, or that, like, the span and the spectrum of my 29 years is that I just remember those early days, people would question your motivation or your commitment.
Yeah.
But now we've seen that when you risk it all, and there is always risk, even in training exercises, that you know the risks and you're ready for it.
Oh, you brought up Megan McClung, and there's a connection I feel to her just because I spent a lot of time in Hawaii, and I remember that's where she was born, right?
That's right. Yeah, her family, I believe they were stationed there. Her father was a Marine, and her middle name is Milani, Megan Milani McClung. And so that Hawaiian spirit stayed with her.
Oh, and that's another thing though too, is when I think about the soldiers that lost their lives last month, they did some reports on a couple of the women that were there, and what was, I love the contrast because they were in battle gear, and it showed them with kids over there and helping out with the kids, and there was that element of the human spirit in a very tattered place that you wouldn't get otherwise. And I know that one of the things that you did when you were out there was to connect with the people. And you seem to have, I used this word a couple of times already, but you do have a knack for that. And I'm just wondering, how did you go about building those connections in a perceived hostile environment, but also changing the minds of people that probably had some animosity for you being there, and if not, it was still something different?
Well, thanks. Connecting with the local people, I always remind people, we were never at war with the Iraq people or Afghan people. So when you get to meet them, they're lovely people. They just want the same things as we all do. Family, a sense of security, but it was always an opportunity to be sort of an unofficial ambassador of the United States. And so when you get to represent your country and people are looking to you, you're American, and you always have to go with that, like, I'm an ambassador, I'm an unofficial ambassador when meeting other people from other countries, and they look to you for that leadership that they come to expect of Americans, and just holding up those ideals. And so treating them with respect and dignity and helping them, putting your arms around, say, we're going to try to make this better for you, was really a challenge, but an opportunity to stretch myself in ways I didn't really know that I could or that I had in me. But really showing them that we are, willing to serve and able to help people. Countries that have more can do more. And so it's really was our opportunity to show them that we do care. one handshake at a time, or one smile at a time, or giving them gifts, or just, you know, because these people have nothing. So it really reminds you of just how much we have. And so I was always grateful for that juxtaposition of how much in the land of plenty in America, and then you go somewhere where they don't have anything. It really makes you realize just how grateful we all should be for being Americans.
Do you mind sharing an experience that kind of sticks in your mind of an interaction with somebody?
Yeah, you know, I was able to partner with the local Afghan media when I was on deployment in 2013, and they had slowly matured their media force and their training opportunities for media. So I was able to coach them a little bit and really made them feel like equals. And we brought them to press conferences, and we brought them to some of our opportunities, and treated them like a top tier media, the ABC or CNN. And that made them feel really, you know, professional. And I enjoyed connecting with them and watching them develop and tell their stories. And in the process, I learned that they know what they're doing. They have, if you go to Afghan media online, you can see their productions. It's really, really well done. And so just giving them that shot, that opportunity to rub shoulders and stand shoulder to shoulder was a good feeling. That we're not America, you know, we think we have all the things, and we do, but they also have had some really great products, like video products, and they were on their game. They were really telling the story well, and had the courage to do that. And so I stay in touch with many of them still today. And unfortunately, the Afghans reach out and say, "Can you help me?" or "I'm scared," or "What can I do?" And I said, just stay strong, keep reporting, do what you can, keep your family safe. We'll see how this works out, but any chance to help them is probably one of my most fondest professional memories, is partnering and mentoring Afghan journalists.
That's cool.
It is so cool. And you bring up something that hits the heart. I remember the first time that we met was over a Zoom call that Chrysanthi Lachos put together. You remember that?
Yes.
I thought, what am I doing here? Well, I'm here with all these war heroes. And but one of the things that, well, not one of the things, many of the things that you just brought up had to do with making that human connection. And this is something that really struck me. My dad fought for the 442nd. So he had me when he was later in life. And there weren't a lot of stories that he told us about those days and the craziness. But one thing that he did share was that one time they took in some POWs, some prisoners of war. And of course he was ticked that they were trying to kill him. And he was escorting them, and he wanted to really express that anger and something to the extent of, "Why are you doing this?" and that kind of thing. And the German soldier in perfect English said, "I don't want to be here. I'm just doing it because my government told me that I needed to be here too." And it was amazing how that diffused that situation by instead of looking at the individual as an enemy, looking at them as a fellow human being. Now, as kumbaya as that might sound, it was something that changed my dad significantly. You could tell that really influenced him. And when I see your stories, I see that similar element, is that you're bringing in that human factor in it. There's no longer here's an Afghan, either an enemy, as much as, man, we need to help these folks. And guess what? They made me laugh. We laughed together. Those type of things there. And I'm just wondering, how would you recommend going about nurturing that side of the narrative instead of the stuff that goes on so much nowadays?
Well, when you have boots on the ground, as they say, and you're eye to eye, and you're face to face with, I won't say the enemy, but people you're trying to help. And so this is asymmetric warfare where we're not sure really who the enemy is, or the enemy could be within us, or, an Afghan soldier is an insider attack situation, as you've heard before. When you're eye to eye with someone, you get down to the basic human needs and survival, and realizing that no one wants to kill anyone else. But you have to be prepared for that, and just getting back to those basic human elements of survival. But I think, in our culture, Western culture is, we're sort of above all that. We're sort of more into the actualization, self-actualization, and we don't need to use warfare anymore. But when you drop us in, we parachute into a third world, 6th century culture, and you're time transported into, let's say, Afghanistan, and you realize that these people are just basic needs. They're in their basic needs situation where they're just food, water, shelter, and haven't really moved through the Maslow's hierarchy. You realize it brings you back down to, okay, basic survival, food, shelter, water, health, but trying to bring them up through the, centuries worth of progress in a short amount of time. And so people might be confused as to, how did it take 20 years and we still didn't accomplish what we needed to, let's say in Afghanistan? But I can assure you that great progress was made in so many areas of academics and research and policing and development of women's issues, and really made great strides, but yet still be at such a basic needs. And so it will take a lot more money and a lot more effort, let's say in Afghanistan, to bring them up to a standard even of European standard, or even in the other places in the Middle East. You can say, if you go to Dubai or UAE and you wonder, wow, they are, so far, they've made so many strides in their culture, but yet just next door, they're really left behind.
Mhm.
And so you just kind of look across the span and like, what can we do to help people? But when you're eye to eye with someone, you really realize we're all just human, and we're just all need those basic needs to be met.
I love
It's
it.
interesting. Honestly, I've never thought of it that way.
Mhm.
I've never thought that they're in a situation where it's like you said, it's basic needs. And so, you hear the different, people sitting back in the US or wherever it may be, and like, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing that? That just really kind of hit me hard a little bit, that, they're talking basic survival. You don't want to hand them a laptop when they need a piece of bread.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And
Right.
so what may look like as a failure in your eyes, you're just like, no, wait a minute, this is massive success.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for pointing that out. That really is interesting to me, and something to really think about.
It really did. And it was evident when you saw the news coverage, and they did highlight how that progression had impacted their youth. They had never known anything but that progression, and but just to see where they were fearing going back, and thank you, very touching.
Well, thanks. A story that you may have heard of, may have not heard of. A couple of years ago, the country of Afghanistan had a girls robotics team that they sent to, a competition, I think, in Europe. And so having a girls robotics team just showed you some of the progress. And some other, orchestras, the Afghan orchestra that was a traveling team. There's just the soccer team was, winning team, the men's soccer team. And so there's just great strides made in so many areas, but yet we'll see what becomes of it now. But yes, there was tremendous progress made across so many spectrums that it would be hard to roll it all back, but we'll see how that goes.
Oh my goodness.
And and for troops, service members, civilians, contractors who've all served in Afghanistan, you never really leaves you, because once you go there, you know what a special place it is. And through the centuries, Afghanistan has just been a special place. And in the 70s, it was known that it was very, all the esoteric people would come through there, and women were wearing mini skirts, and people would travel there on the spice trail and the Silk Road, and crossing over to India, from Europe to India. So there's so much history and so much amazing, literally centuries old buildings there and historical places to visit, that I wished one day it would be a place I'm going to come back one day as a tourist and be able to see these places. But the progress that will be made remains to be seen. But I think that people can be proud of the work that they've done there, and not let this little ending score shake people's confidence in the work that we did. And once you go there, it's always in your heart and you're in your head, in your mind, you're still kind of there and wishing the best for those people.
Again, thank you for giving us that other picture that we normally wouldn't see, especially for one that's been there so many times.
Well, when 9/11 happened, we all had to kind of pull out a map and say, where is this Afghanistan exactly, right? And now we know it's on the map. Yes. So little did we know what had done there, and reading some of the history with the Brits and the Russians and now the US. Yeah. So there are some real lessons to learn from our involvement there. And, it's not all bad, but I think for service members and their families and their supporters, and what America can be proud of, is that our involvement there, the troops on the ground made such an impact on people. Yeah. And that those young people that we could influence and impact will remember us as good ambassadors from the US.
Wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing some of those lessons. You mentioned the lessons learned. What are some of those?
I can speak for myself, and that those lessons come from, when we grow up, I would say very spoiled in America, where water comes out of the faucet and you can drink it, where we have laws that protect us against corruption and theft and stealing. And when you realize there are other countries and cultures that don't have those things. And so I think when someone serves in Afghanistan or just travels abroad, and generally speaking, is that when you come home, you realize that all of the bickering and the fighting at the city level, at the county, at the state, and the federal levels, all that bickering comes with compromise, and that we are a country of people who can compromise, and compromise is really the only way that we can make these things work, and roads can get built and buildings can be built. So in places like Afghanistan, where you have bickering and fighting and people are stealing money, is because they're still just figuring out their basic needs. So corruption is very rampant there. And the brothers and the cousins and the families kind of take it for themselves, and you're not really sure if there are laws, no one's held to account. So when you have those sort of framework in countries like ours, it makes you appreciate that. And so those lessons of when you never leave the country, and Americans don't have passports, and then they don't really get to see how other people live, and they think that it's really bad here, or that it's not worthy of fighting for or dying for or supporting those, that's a real shame. And so I would really urge everyone to get a passport, go to a foreign country, see what it's like, and you'll have a much more profound appreciation for our country. So those lessons in general are the ones that I took away, is that we don't take anything for granted here in America.
So my question is and first of all, I agree 100%. I think one of the biggest antidotes to bigotry and many of the negative things is travel, is getting out and seeing and meeting people eye to eye and seeing them eye to eye. Just curious, from someone who's spent a life meeting people from vastly different socioeconomic and backgrounds and everything else, how do we reach the people in the US that don't get out? How do you, it's got to be just frustrating to sit back and go, you know, you're arguing about your trash can on the front porch when you've got running water. You know, how do we get that perspective to the people that don't have the opportunity to get out?
You know, well, hopefully some, you know, if they're open-minded enough to you know, look at pictures from reputable sources, or tap into some news sources outside of the US, or really, you know, with the power of the internet now, you can just click on Facebook and hashtag India, or hashtag Sri Lanka, or hashtag Niger, and find out what is going on there. And then, you know, with the power of video or photos, to learn and say, oh boy, that doesn't look good, or that's unfortunate. Even if you're a dog lover and you see all the stray dogs that are in Sri Lanka, it breaks your heart. And so you realize that the reason why we have order and we have laws and we have accounting for them and disciplinary action is what keeps us, everyone sort of obeying and living in a world order. Like, we have to have order. We have, you know, people, human nature, we require governing. I mean, we saw last summer with, even in the States, when if you don't have a law enforcement, or you don't have people who are abiding by the law, they're being very destructive. And so even in America, we're just sort of on the tipping edge of, you know, anarchy or lawlessness. And so you can imagine what it's like in other countries. So, but other countries look to us as being a model for citizenry and citizenship, and what that means, and paying taxes and abiding by the laws. And so when we don't abide by that and the world is watching, it sends a signal that it's okay for them to do that in their home country. But, you know, basic needs countries, anywhere in, you know, places in Africa, obviously in Asia, you know, it's just a different culture. But if you experience it firsthand, you will definitely be changed forever.
Yes. Matter of fact, as you've been saying all these things, I look at the things that I've been complaining about the last couple of days. Absolutely pathetic. It really is. Absolutely pathetic. And the first world problems is what my kids call them, right?
Yeah, you know, and we fall into those doldrums and say, oh, you know, I had to wait 5 minutes to get gas, or my credit card is expiring, I need to order a new one, or it didn't arrive or something, you know. So all these examples that are our world, you know, we do think in terms of how to maximize our own potential here, and as you know, we go through our daily life. But when we stop for a moment and realize that how lucky we are, and we're only lucky because we have young men and women ready to stand and defend our country, and if against those who wish to seek us harm, or take away our freedoms and take away our lifestyle. And thankfully that we do. And if we can just remember that, and we have every right to complain if there's potholes in the road, we paid for those, or we demand an accounting for our civilian leadership. We want to make sure that those people who are elected to do what they are elected to do and perform. And so we have that luxury to do that. So, but there are other people in other countries who are just stuck in a system that has not evolved. And it's unfortunate. But travel, and then when you touch back down onto US soil, you realize just how special it is.
Truly, it really is. It really is. I'm going to pivot a little bit too, because when we first met, you showed us a book. And of course I had to look, what is that book? And it was the Heroes Live Here. And
That's right.
yes. And you got it right there, right?
I do. Well, I have a little graphic here. And so I lived on the island of Guam for 5 years, which is an island territory, US territory out in the Pacific. I came back to the States and living in San Diego, California, and working on a military base called Camp Pendleton, California. And I realized that through the past 20 years that Camp Pendleton-based Marines and sailors have been deploying and serving in Iraq and Afghanistan continuously for the last 20 years and really paid a heavy price. And so on the base, there are many new memorials and dedications dedicated to those who have lost their lives. And so I thought, let me take some pictures, maybe share them with friends and family that live outside of the base, who don't have access into the families of those fallen. They may not have even been to the base to see what kind of memorials that are here now. And so I thought, well, let me put these together in a compilation book. And so that's what my passion project called Heroes Live Here, a tribute to Camp Pendleton Marines since 9/11. And so just as a 20-year look at the wars and those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice, because more Marines and sailors from Camp Pendleton than any other base or installation have been killed or injured in Iraq and Afghanistan. So the community here has come together and supported these troops just second to none. And really it's a team effort here in this region. And so I just wanted to pay tribute to them. So the book will be coming out next month, well, in October. Late October, early November. And so I'm excited about that, just right before Veterans Day. And so just being able to share a 20-year look at the sacrifices and service of our troops here at Camp Pendleton.
I wanted to thank you personally for that, because I'm a 9/11 survivor. I don't know if you listened to any of the podcasts before that, but just to see everything that they did and all the armed forces, it was amazing. And I mentioned in a prior podcast that it was amazing to be able to land in a plane, land and have everyone clap because we knew we were safe. But that large part of that was because of the sacrifices that they did. And so thank you for making that tribute to them.
Oh, well, we're all interconnected in some way, shape or form, especially from that day and on, is that the mission continued, and then it evolved, and then, we sent more troops, and for the tens of thousands of troops, from that day, really is a connection in spirit that their legacy lives on. And the first responders, especially, just who would we be without them? We're nothing without them. So, but thanks for sharing your story. We're just all interconnected in so many special ways.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, I don't know about you, Cars. She kind of, she is, you're not here. I'm sorry about that, but it reminds me of, we just interviewed Jen Welter. I don't know if you know who Jen is. She was the first coach that was a female in the NFL. And one of the things that your story reminds me of is hers. And there's something that she said that was, and I'd like to get your take on it. She goes, it wasn't that I was the first. I was setting the tone so that I wouldn't be the last. And that was so powerful, right? And in a like way, you've done the same thing, in that you became that military correspondent. Before you, how many female war correspondents were there? Probably very, very few, if any. And I'm just wondering, since you started, legacy-wise, how many have you mentored since that time?
Well, you know that I appreciate that question. There weren't that many that I know of out on the front lines and out with the troops on patrol, taking photos, but it's been the highlight of my career to be able to showcase and take imagery of troops and share the courage it takes to wear a uniform. So I can document that for future generations to see just the bravery it takes to go out on the front lines and all of their activities. But I've sort of turned a corner where now I'm always looking forward and looking towards what's the future for me or what am I doing. But I'm now looking in the rearview mirror and wondering what doors can I open, what opportunities are out there behind me, because I want to make sure that the road is clear, is free and clear for the next generation to come up and really take things to the next level. And so looking at what opportunities can I present for other young women and men to take things to the next level. And so, you reach a point in your career where like, okay, it's time to give back and share all the lessons that I've learned. And I tell people I've made 1,000 mistakes. You don't make mine. You can make your own, just don't make mine. And here's what I did wrong. So don't stay away from that. That didn't work. Or, but what mistakes are you making that, we can work on, or sharing those hard lessons learned with, blood, sweat, and tears. But just want to make sure we're facilitating the good transfer of information to the next generation. Otherwise, they are going to make the same mistakes and then not really make progress. So, there's so many kids today, we may not be sure of how they're coming up. They're born with phones in their hands and online, and but they are really, there's so many great, motivated, inspired young people out there who are going to be our next generation of leaders in business and the military and academia. And we just need them to be equipped with all the tools so that they have a tough road ahead, because we have some complicated problems in our country and in the world, and we need to set them up for success.
Oh man, I don't know about you, Gary, but this is awesome. I don't even know how we could end better than that.
But you guys know, you've talked to a lot of people, and there's just doers out there, and there's people who really, we realize that what's at stake in our next generation, and we want to make sure that we leave them set up to do great things and maximize their own potential, and hopefully give them the tools that they need to really take things to the next level, because they're going to need our help, that help.
And I appreciate you laying that foundation, a very good foundation.
She made a career out of that.
Yes, you have. You really have. Well, Amy, I have a feeling that some of the listeners will definitely want to contact you. I hope you don't mind, because I know I'm going to share your name with a number of corporate folks that could really use your story. So I want to thank you for taking the time to interview with us. It's been fun.
Oh, thank you so much. I mean, it's always great to talk with you guys, and keep up the good work and what you're doing, and bringing inspired stories, leadership, really making that available for people out there. It really kind of flattens the curve on being able to put these tools and just any nuggets out there that people might need. You just never know who you can reach and who might be needing it most right now. With COVID, people are really hungry and thirsty for some really genuine conversations and where things might lead. But I welcome to connect with people on social media. I love to just always make myself available and want to chat, or people have questions about joining the military or what it's like to work in the media. Those are kind of my areas of expertise, or maybe someone's looking at being a photographer, working, going overseas and travel. Those are just topics that I enjoy talking about.
We're going to
Awesome.
put it out there for you. Well,
Super.
Amy, again, thank you for your time. So appreciated. And as we do with so many, I think we're going to do something again. So watch out, okay?
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
You got
Thank
it.
you.
Take care.